So today we're going to create a nice little system with which we can change between different blocks. As you can see down in the right corner, you can also see the name of the blocks and how many items or resources you would need to construct them. Hello and welcome. Quick disclaimer, I actually caught a small cold, meaning my voice is a bit rough. However, I hope you won't mind it too much. So back to the video. We're actually going to expand our build system made in the last episode by actually changing the current block we're building with. Yeah, and basically adding a scroll system, a bit of UI, all of that fun stuff. And just as a quick overall, we're actually going to look at
Scriptable Objects. Oh.
If you don't know what they are, don't worry. I'm going to show you how they work. I'm not going to go in depth about them. However, yeah, I don't know everything about them. I can still use them, and I hope after this video you might be clear about them. So let's begin. And before going into the changing of the blocks, I actually want to show you a quick change I made in the highlight block system down here. I actually added these 4 lines, as in the last video I forgot them. With the last video, if you would have looked anywhere else than the block, okay. So when building blocks, you would have actually, the last block would still be left highlighted. Now you can actually look away and then look back at the blocks. See, they're highlighted, boom, I look away, now they're not. Yeah, so that's quite nice. And actually I forgot the line, meaning that we actually want to set the last high block equals null. As you could see, we had a few problems there when looking back at the block. So let's just see. In theory, when we now place a block, we should see that. Nice. We can look way back, and it works fine. Now, let's go back to the script and actually start changing our current block up here. And for that, we're going to start looking at scriptable objects. Now, scriptable objects are, I'm just going to start, it's called block, are basically containers in which we can multiply quite frequently, and in these containers we can store our own data. Hello, Future Philip here. That explanation was kind of all over the place. And to recap, basically a scriptable object is a data container in which we can put our own custom variables and access them in other scripts, and it's quite easy to create a lot of copies. In our case, it's quite nice to use them, as we want to have multiple blocks which we can then add attributes to. I hope it's a bit clearer than that explanation, and have fun with the rest of the video. Also had 2 things. First of all, a system of serializable. You don't have to understand what this means. I also don't. I just know if you don't have it here, it's not actually going to be shown in the inspector. Meaning this player number, if it wouldn't have a system.serializable like built into the Unity engine, it wouldn't have be shown in this editor here. And we also want to add a menu. Here, create asset menu, brackets, menu name equals typing block, and file name equals new block. What they do, well, we'll see a bit later. So now let's actually set the values or variables we want to have in our block container. For our block, we actually want to have a public string block name, as we actually want to know what block we're placing. We want to have a public game object, block object, and I think that's about it for now. So let's go back into our build system, and now we can actually do quite a lot of things. Instead of game object current block, we can actually make this private, and we can now do public block. Let's just say current building block, And when now looking to the inspector, we should see that we have this free and empty space for actually adding our block scriptable objects. However, we haven't created any, and that's what we're going to do now. It's very important that you differentiate between the block script and the block scriptable object that basically we create from the script. This is the script that houses all of the data, or basically tells the Unity what to create, and the objects that it creates are the scriptable objects. I know it sounds really complicated, but after you wrap your head around it, it's not that complicated, I hope. Okay, so now let's create a new folder, as we might want a few blocks and it could clutter our thing down here. So let's create a new blocks folder. This isn't necessary, I just like to keep my stuff organized. So let's go into the blocks, and when clicking on create here, we can actually see that we now have the option to create a new block. That is actually what we did up here in our block thing. Menu name, block. If we want to create it to like, wow, I'm cool, and look in here, and look in here, thank you, create, boom, wow, I'm cool, nice. However, let's go back and just rename it to block. And oh, and also, if I were to delete the system.serializable thing, you should actually also see that when going to the inspector on the player, we don't okay, apparently it isn't necessary for the scriptable objects. Class is actually needed if you create your public own public class, block I, and just have it as a class. You do actually need a system.serializable. However, for a scriptable object you don't need it, apparently. So yeah, got it confused a bit. Okay, now we can actually go into the Unity, boom, create a new block, and now we have our new block down here, scriptable object. Let's just call it, let's just call it stone. And as you can see, we have our two variables we set up here. Now in this inspector, and we can actually set them. Let's just set it to stone block, and as an object we can just add this cube 1. Let's also delete it from our scene here. Save, and when clicking now on stone, you can actually see it saved those two values. And we can now go into the player and actually just put it into our current building block that we put in our building system up here. And instead of instantiating our current block, we can just set the current building block, that's our here block scriptable object dot, and we now have the possibility to access the block name, the string, and the block object. Let's just put the block object. So what our script is currently doing is we are saying get the block object from our current block here. It basically then goes to our block, looks in here into the block object, which is our fancy cube. So if we were to run it, we should be able to see that we can still place blocks. Nice. Okay. However, these basic blocks are quite boring and we don't actually know what block we're placing. So let's change that by adding a bit of UI. So let's click on UI, text mesh pro. Name, let's just call it current block name. Also, by the way, for the most of you, there should be a small window up here saying you don't have text mesh pro in your project, and then just click the import text mesh pro essentials. Sorry, as I told you, I'm a bit sick. Okay, so now we have this text mesh pro. Why text mesh pro and not just the normal text. The normal text, yep, still after a few years, Unity still hasn't changed it. The normal text is this really bad looking thing. So we are using this Text Mesh Pro. Boom, let's delete that. Also, I just got into the 2D mode as it's far easier to edit UI of that. Here you have your canvas. I just want to drag it down here, and what I want to see is actually the name of the item. Sorry, and below it, let's just make it a bit longer. Actually, the amount I have, like 4 times, also not item, we have block, name of block and 4 times block. I think that would look quite fancy down there. And also a quite tip I can give you is always just test out how something looks and just write a basic text in there so you can see how big it is and adjust it. I want to actually adjust it to the right. That looks good. Make it a bit bigger and make it a bit bolder. Nice. That looks, if we go into game mode, lovely, perfect. And now I actually want to set text. Setting text in Unity is quite simple. We actually just want a reference to the text, and if you just put text in here, or just put text in here, you can actually see there's no such object, as Unity does not know currently what text is. For actually letting Unity know what text is, you have to go up here to the libraries, say using TMP Pro, Text Mesh Pro. If you were to use the normal text, you would have to use Unity engine.ui. However, as I told you, that text looks very bad. So let's use TMP Pro, and if you now press there, you can TMP Pro underscore text, and let's just call it block name text. Nice. Now, what we want to do is we want to set the current block name and the block amount. So actually let's go in here and also specify not the block amount. What am I talking? Sorry. So let's just make a quick function. Let's just say set text maybe. Yeah, set text. For that we want to say the here we have here the block name text. Block name text dot text. Yep, that's how easy it is. Equals the current building block. That's our block up there. Dot name plus, and we actually want to have a /n. What this means is new line, i.e., we're basically telling Unity to press enter here. Because if we wouldn't do that, it would look like this. However, if we were to make this with stone, you can see it looks quite weird. So basically we're telling the Unity to, after the name of the block, just press enter once and boom, now it's on the second line. Nice. So we're basically telling new line plus. Okay, sorry, I was just lost. We actually also want to add to placeholder things. First of all, the public string items needed for building block. I know it's a quite long variable, however, variables that tell you what they are always noise. And now we also want to have a public int amount of item needed. By the way, items are going to be in the next episode. They're not going to be as good as the items in Minecraft. It's just a basic principle that might help you get started, or better help you go into the right direction. So that's in the next video. So now let's just go into here and add the current building block dot item needed for building block, or no, amount of item needed. So we can basically, if you go into here, we can say you need 4 times the 4 times wood or something like that to actually place stone. That doesn't make sense. 4 times stone to actually place the stone block. Nice. Block. Boom. Okay, so let's go into here. Then do the plus x plus current building block dot item needed for building block. Okay, now this looks like quite a lot, however it really isn't. We're basically saying current building block dot name, spelled by the way with the block name here. Just using name would actually take the name of the scriptable object, i.e. stone here, however we want to take the building block. The items needed, or item needed, well, let's just say that it takes stone to build, and it takes 2 stone to build. Yeah, sure. And if we go into here, we can check plus new line, it makes a new line, amount of item needed, 2x, and then the item needed. Okay, nice. And let's just set the text at the start of the game. Set text, and remember to also, yeah, Unity thing player, just go down here and set the text by putting it in there, and we should see that it now automatically updates to stone block. That's the name we gave it, the amount needed to build it, and it takes 2 stone to build. Nice. Okay, now how about we can actually change the blocks we are using? I know. Oh, wow. So for that we are actually going to first of all make another block. Let's just call it second building block. We're actually going to later make it out of an array, however it's quite easy first of all with 2 items. And let's make a function called void change current block. And for that we're going to use the mouse scrolling wheel. I.e. we're just going to direct log it input dot scroll mouse scroll delta here. Now mouse scroll delta actually returns vector 2. I'm just going to show you how it looks with the y value actually being the way you're scrolling. As you can see, it changes from 0 to -1 and sometimes to -2 if I'm scrolling really fast, and from 0 to 1 to sometimes 2 if I'm scrolling up and if I'm scrolling down. We can actually just take this, put it into a integer, i.e. int scroll equals input, if I can write, dot scroll mouse scroll delta dot y, and let's actually put it in a float as it returns a float. Nice. And let's just say if scroll is bigger than 0, i.e. we're scrolling up, and else if scroll is less than 0, i.e. we're scrolling down. We want to change the current building block, and actually I just realized it's far easier to do with an array. So another interesting thing, you can actually, out of the scriptable object, we can also you can also make arrays. Now we have a block array. Let's call it available building blocks. Nice. And we also need an integer current block index, and let's just set that to 0. So copy that. This is going to return an error for now, just ignore it. And we want to go down to our current change current block. So what we want to do is actually set our current building block, the block we're building with, to the available building blocks current block index. I'm just going to explain what this does in a moment. And actually, yeah, what should work. Current building block, we're actually going to put this into a block. Current block. Yeah, sure. current block object. Does this... Oh yeah, and also just change that. Okay, now going back to down here, we what I just did was the current block index, which started at 0, and we actually want to increase this current block index or decrease it, i.e. we're going to go up the array or down the array. As you can see here, we can increase the current block index now when going up, and decrease the current block index when going down. Before actually setting it, we can also just debug.log the current block index, so you can see how it changes when scrolling. Let's go into Unity. Thank you. And when I'm scrolling now, you can... Oh, we actually have to put the function into the update loop, of course. So let's go back into Unity. Boom, press play. And as you can see down there, I'm actually just scrolling up and down. The value changes rapidly. Nice. Okay. So, before actually going into the array, we actually don't want to get an object that's at minus 100 or that's 80 when we only have 2 blocks, as that would cause an error. So we're also going to check if our current block index is bigger, as we're also increasing it. It makes sense to check if it's bigger than our available building blocks.length minus 1. Not that. Why minus 1? Because the current building blocks.length actually says there are 2 objects in there. However, 2 objects, as it's 0 indexes, it should only go to 0 and 1 and not 2. So minus 1. And also on the decrease, if our current block index is smaller than, here we can just say 0. Well then, if it's bigger than that, we just want to set the current block index to 0. So it basically wraps around. And if it's too small, we actually want to set the current block index to the available building blocks.length minus 1. Meaning, if we get too small, we actually wrap around, going back to the largest amount of blocks. And here we actually if we go here too big, we actually just return at 0. Nice. And now we can also set it here. However, if you were to actually look at it, it would just go stay at 0, as we don't have any available building blocks in our array. So let's change that. Currently we only have stone, so let's also add a block called wood. Let's give it the name wood block. Let's also just for now give it the same block that the stone has, i.e. cube 1. The items needed for it are obviously wood, and the amount of items needed is just 1. Nice. And we also want to set the text. Set text. Nice. And as you can see, we actually set the current block here. Should work fine. So let's just try it out. Oh, of course I actually have to put the things inside of the available building blocks. Let's just import stone and wood, and let's try it out. Nice. And now I can scroll down, and as you can see down there, it changes from the wood block 1 times wood to stone block. Boom. Nice. That was good. And as a kind of end for this small video, I actually want to change this quite boring cube to something far more interesting. And for that, as you can also already see, I just stole the wood texture from Minecraft. So let's create 2 new materials, one for stone. Oh, by the way, you should not just steal textures or art from the internet. However, as I don't plan of making this full-blown game. It's fine. So let's just go into wood mat, just take the wood texture, and you just give me a second. I'm just going to steal the stone texture.
1 minute later.
Okay, I just stole the stone texture from Google. Here, stone, bomb, bomb. Just make it a stone texture. I'm actually going to set the smoothness of both of them to 0, as stone's not that smooth, also wasn't that smooth, and it looks kind of weird when setting them smooth, if that makes sense. And let's actually drag this cube down in here. Let's call it wood cube. Let's also get out of the 2D mode. F to just press F to, by the way, just make this camera go to that object. F and have this mouse inside of your scene view. And let's put when going to materials, by the way, right click, prefab, unpack completely, meaning it's now a game object and not a prefab. Put on the wood texture. Nice, looks lovely. Control D to copy it. Next, let's call this one stone cube. Put the stone material on it. Wonderful. Assets. Let's also make just put them into the blocks here. Oh, I guess one at a time. Wood cube, stone cube. Let's both delete them. Bomb. And going to the stone cube, going to the wood cube. Nice. And now, when actually placing these blocks, you should now see the difference in their wonderful texture. So yeah, we could actually now, okay, I don't know what's wrong with my movement system, but we could actually now just make a small little house. And you can make as many blocks as you want. With the system, it's quite easy to make hundreds of them. You might actually want to make more variables in here. You can make a public bool if it uses gravity, i.e. it should have a rigid body added to it. You could make it destructible, give it health if it's a shooter and you want to actually destroy it later. Give it health so that it actually decreases in health every time you shoot at it. And yeah, that should be it for this, I think, quick tutorial. I haven't looked at the time. Next video we're going to actually look at a very basic item system and how to actually decrease these items. And I hope you have a wonderful day until then. Yeah, see ya.